Stories from Mexico brings you the news from Mexico from August 11th to August 20th. Today, we will talk about how Cjng members were arrested in the Czech Republic, including El Jardinero's godson. Cjng and Los Mayos threaten each other and will go to war in Nayarit. Hopefully not though. Cjng does blockades in Michoacán for El Tío Lako. Fausto Corrales, a man related to kidnapping El Mayo, was arrested. And to end off, we talk about how the Mexican government recovered 120 kilograms of fentanyl in Baja California. This is the war in Mexico. 4 members of Cjng were arrested in the Czech Republic. They were trying to buy military-grade weapons, and they were also linked to trying to traffic drugs. Well, not actually trying to, they literally had fentanyl pills on them. How crazy is it that the Cjng might literally be everywhere? They have been seen in Africa, they're obviously in Latin America, but are they also in Europe? Well, they might be. It's not hard to believe. For some reason, criminals from Latin America love Europe. I don't know why. However, I haven't heard cases of them being in Asia. However, I wouldn't doubt that they are in Asia though. I have never seen a cartel like Cjng, a criminal organization like them that is willing to get money from anywhere they can. And these guys will go anywhere if they could get money from it. Cjng is in fact a very powerful organization. The United States puts them as a foreign terrorist organization and one of the most powerful drug cartels in Mexico and in the world. The 4 men are named Edgar, Noé, Leobardo, and Jose, and they're the ones that were arrested in the Czech Republic. Each one had a role. That's why each one was sent by the Cjng leaders, I suppose. Edgar was a representative of an unnamed high-level Cjng member. He was the one everyone respected, I suppose. Noé was a fentanyl trafficker with a lab in Mexico. He was supplying the operation. Leobardo was a broker of the Cjng and a dealer. He was the one making the deals for the weapons and reporting the money back to Cjng bosses, reporting back everything about the deal basically. And Jose was in fact the godson of El Jardinero. And if we're being honest, he's not that important in this role. He was just there. He's El Jardinero's son, so why not have him along, right? So they went out, maybe check out Europe for their first time as well. I don't know, maybe these criminals are traveling more than we are, right? I wouldn't doubt it. Some of these guys, they were really under the radar. So they visit Europe and they are getting to know the Czech Republic. But what they didn't know was that they were going straight into the mouth of the wolf and they would regret their actions. Authorities say that in February of 2026, Leobardo negotiated the purchase of the machine guns and destructive devices from the Czech Republic to Mexico. Those weapons and devices were intended to be used in Mexico against rival organizations of the Cjng, as well as to harm the Mexican authorities. And what I personally think is worse is to bring harm to just the society in Mexico, not just externally but internally. Mexican civilians don't deserve this type of actions, especially not by any criminal organizations. The purchase was intended to be for European machine guns, RPGs, some 61mm launchers. Those are used in war technically, but they were gonna use it in Mexico, a place that is having a war on drugs, the war in Mexico as we say here. And they were buying ammunition as well for such weapons. However, the deal they were making was not with the European mafia, or I don't know who really controls the Czech Republic, but they were not making deals with those sketchy people. To be honest, these Cjng members are not the brightest. They never got suspicious that maybe those weapons are extremely rare in Europe unless it is owned by the military or the police. However, the Cjng members, like I said, They're dumb. They're not bright. They're not smart. Some of these people, they never finish middle school. So they continue doing this type of deals. And they continue doing this deal from February to June. And they never had their suspicions raised. On June 10th of 2026, they made a visit to the Czech Republic. They traveled to complete the sale. However, the Cjng members were not going to pay with money. They wanted to pay with fentanyl pills. Even dumber, the police decided to have them with evidence. They brought 400 grams of fentanyl pills and more than 500 grams of methamphetamine in Europe, in the Czech Republic. How crazy is that? All four men were arrested that same evening on June 10th. Jose, the godson of El Jardinero, has dual citizenship. He is Mexican American, and so is Edgar. They will be extradited to the United States. In fact, they were extradited last week, and they will face charges there, while the other men are still waiting in Europe to be extradited to Mexico. It was also reported that the lab that Noé had for his fentanyl pills in Mexico was dismantled on June 12th. That just shows us that the Mexican government knows where these labs are at, and maybe they're not targeting them for some reason. And we know the reason. We know the truth. Let's be real. We know the truth. However, I want to point this out. How they went out is comical. It's funny to me. It's like one of those hood movies where they're at the peak and then they're like, oh yeah, Noé got 20 years and his lab got dismantled. And don't forget about Edgar, where he got extradited and this and that. It's crazy. It's like a movie to me. It's like a hood movie to me. It's funny. It's funny. These guys went out sad. They're dumb. They never think about consequences. These criminals, they never think about consequences. They get into this life. Sometimes, like the godson of El Jardinero, he got into this life because his godfather is El Jardinero. He has no other choice. These other people, I don't know how they get into this type of life and why some people even idolize this type of stuff. However, this is not what you want. It's just dumb. However, let's move on to more news. On August of 2026, the Mayos and the Cjng started threatening each other. They're declaring war basically on Tepic, Nayarit. And they are gonna go to war in that city if they don't figure things out. Over the past week, Cjng and the Mayos, a faction of the Sinaloa cartel, have been going at it, leaving narco banners and threatening to light up the city of Tepic with violence. The region has been controlled by Cjng for years, but now the Mayos are trying to move in. The first banner was posted and started the whole spark of this. It was found in San Cayetano, a rural area close to Tepic. The message says that they want to bring peace to the city and that they're going to take out the people that are bad. Los Mayos posted the message. In fact, it is very bad written. These people, like I said, they don't go to school. Cjng responded by putting a banner themselves with a banner in Los Lobos Bridge, a road leading to the exit of Mazatlan. This banner has better handwriting and does not have spelling mistakes. Maybe Cjng has more graduates. Later, on August 15, 2026, two corpses were sadly discovered that were tied up from a bridge with two banners. In those banners, they threatened the state governor of Nayarit and they threatened the Sinaloa cartel as a whole. This message was obviously from Cjng. Hopefully, the violence in Nayarit does not actually spike, because we have seen in the past, these narco banners are never good. Let's move on, however, to how Cjng started narco blockades all over Michoacan in response to the operations against El Tío Lako. As we talked in videos before, El Tío Lako is being chased heavily by the Mexican government. They're being targeted. El Tío Lako is being targeted by the Mexican government. They're targeting the Cjng organization as a whole. And we've talked about this. but now they're going against El Tío Lako and his family. In response to those operations, Cjng still thinks that narco blockades and harming the cities around where they are will do the trick and they will release dangerous criminals. However, the Mexican government has not been making deals with criminals like they've done in the past. You know what happened in 2019 when AMLO did a certain deal with Los Chapitos when Culiacan was in flames. However, Cjng did 24 blockades in the state of Michoacan. The Mexican government reported operations in Tinaja de Vargas, Tanjuato, Colesio, and Ecuandero in Michoacan that resulted in 9 arrests of Cjng members, including 2 females, one of them being the partner of El Tío Lako, and his son was also arrested in the operation. Talk about a family business going down, right? And talk about putting your son in a bad position. Why would you bring your son in this type of business? It's crazy. El Tío Lako, however, evaded capture once again. He is on a thin rope that is almost snapping on him. El Tío Lako is accused of ordering the attacks of February 22 when El Mencho was killed. You know what happened with El Mencho. And you know every action has a consequence, and now he is seeing the consequences of his actions. In addition to the arrest, firearms, explosives, and drones were also seized, as well as 2 homes where people were staying at. Violent blockades were placed by Cjng. These blockades are either meant to release the capture of the leader or to allow him to escape. The blockades work because they build time and he manages to escape, obviously. These blockades are also targeting the property of civilians and bring panic all around. El Tío Lako is being targeted by the Mexican government and his days are counted. Now we will talk about this individual that is named Fausto Corrales. He faces charges for kidnapping El Mayo and covering up a murder of an individual. As we know, the Mexican government, especially the Mexican president Claudia Sheinbaum, for some reason wants El Mayo to be extradited back to Mexico from the United States. Maybe she has some reasons. Maybe she don't want El Mayo to talk too much and she wants him back in Mexico. However, El Mayo is a criminal. She claims that he was kidnapped and was taken to the United States illegally. Whether it was legal or not, for me, it was the best thing that could have been done. And criminals don't deserve the same respect as hardworking individuals like me and you do. So whether he was kidnapped or not, who cares? He kidnapped 20,000 people probably, and nobody did nothing to him. So why is the Mexican president defending him? That's weird to me. She is defending this big time criminal. We already know who El Mayo is. And if you guys remember about AMLO, the past president of Morena who handed power down to Sheinbaum, he actually kissed the hand of the mother of El Chapo. That was weird. That was a weird moment in history. I remember that. That was pretty weird. However, the United States is obviously not going to give El Mayo back to the Mexican government. So what is the Mexican government doing? They are targeting people that were related in the so-called kidnapping of El Mayo. And now Fausto Corrales is being targeted. And if he did commit a murder or is covering up a murder or whatever happened there, he obviously should face the consequences. However, it is weird to me how the Mexican government is just now deciding to target him for these charges. Like I said before, we know the truth about this type of stuff. We know the truth. Fausto Corrales is accused of helping El Chapo's son to set up a meeting where El Mayo was kidnapped and brought in a jet to Santa Teresa, New Mexico, where officials of the United States were waiting for him to arrest him. Fausto Corrales also faces a cover-up of a murder, the murder of Hector Cuen Ojeda. The story goes as follows. Fausto set up Hector Cuen to get killed by a hitman that El Mayo provided. Now Fausto and Hector were driving around. They went to a gas station to get gasoline. That's when the shooting happened, resulting in the death of Hector Cuen. When Fausto was asked, he lied and said they tried to carjack them. Cameras showed the opposite, and in later statements provided by El Mayo himself, he reveals the incident where he said he provided the hitman. People who like El Mayo for some reason, I don't know why some people idolize these type of criminals, but people who like El Mayo or El Chapo, El Mencho, or anyone like that, for some reason, they love these type of criminals. I don't know why, but they love to say that these people were real and that they never snitched. But in reality, we know these people were two-faced. They loved snitching. They were not to be trusted, and they backstabbed anyone they could if it benefited them. But let's move on to the video. We will finish off the video talking about how the Mexican government managed to recover 120 kilograms of fentanyl pills in Baja California. In fact, this operation was brought alive by the DEA, who did a deal of exchanging information with Omar Garcia Harfuch, who then did the raid, who got information by the DEA, obviously. The operation of fentanyl pills was in a home, and there was like a lab there, and it was just dismantled. They were linked to Los Rusos. Omar Garcia raided that thanks to information provided by the DEA. This operation is not a small operation. We're used to hearing about all type of big amounts of drugs being seized in Mexico. And sadly, we're used to this type of stuff, right? However, we know this operation was a big hit to the Sinaloa cartel. Los Rusos are part of the Sinaloa cartel. They help out Los Mayos. So this was a big hit for them. Extremely big hit. But sadly, we know that even if they recover this amount of pills, it's still not going to bring the end of the drug war in Mexico. There's just too many drugs in Mexico, too many criminal organizations. It's too messed up right now. And I honestly don't know how any of this could be resolved, but it's just extremely bad. We know that Mexico has a violence issue. The United States has a drug issue where a lot of Americans are troubled and they pursue drugs. They pursue a high that kills them, in fact. But what can we do? This is sadly what has been implemented. It's been going on for a long, long time. Before me and you guys were even born. I'm talking about the 1950s. This was still going on in the 1950s, but it was not talked about as much. But all these drugs that are nowadays, maybe not fentanyl, not back in the day, but meth, all those type of drugs you guys hear back in the day, they used to deal them, and they used to be hardcore. So it's just generations being built up. I don't know how we're gonna end up, but we'll see. This has been the War for Mexico, and thanks for watching. Like, show love. Let's keep on pushing it. Check out Stories from Mexico. I do more in-depth videos there about criminals and the world in Mexico, and other videos in general about individuals. Check it out. You guys won't regret it. Let's keep it going, guys. Keep it blessed.